Happy Friday. This is All About Bitcoin, a show dedicated to all things questions and markets related to Bitcoin, little b for the currency, and Bitcoin, big B for the network. A collective journey to understand, apply, and use this innovation, all Bitcoin, all the time. I'm your host, Christine Lee. Let's have a live look at Bitcoin right now. The CoinDesk Bitcoin price XBX index is trading at $63,891. So broad-based pullback in the crypto markets right now. Bitcoin is slightly, is down by about 2% over the past 24 hours. The most reliable reference prices for institutions since 2014 are now published under the CoinDesk brand, trusted globally as the leader in crypto news, events, and data.
The chart of the day is brought to you by Crypto.com, the world's fastest growing crypto app.
So the crypto market's awash in a sea of red Friday, with major coins like Bitcoin and Ether nursing moderate losses as fears of earlier Federal Reserve interest rate hikes overshadow the impending Taproot upgrade this Sunday. Markets now foresee a first rate hike by July and another by December. This chart showing Bitcoin's spot trading volume across centralized exchanges tracked by CoinDesk, which were much lower on Thursday compared to Wednesday as Bitcoin slowly recovered to above $65,000. Analysts telling CoinDesk last month that investors may have already baked in the long-awaited Taproot upgrade, touted by some as revolutionary. Stack funds saying they wouldn't rule out further downside for Bitcoin in the short term. With equities markets on shaky grounds, the correlation with crypto is strengthening. Moreover, BTC's recent pullback has been much needed as Bitcoin was beginning to show signs of becoming overheated when looking at open interest and funding rates, according to Stack funds, adding that the next support on the downside for Bitcoin is $60,000. For the upside, a break of the previous high will likely send Bitcoin to $75,000. However, they believe further choppiness is the more likely outcome. All right, joining me to discuss the BTC price and other Bitcoin news is our Week in Review panel. We've got CoinDesk Managing Editor of Technology, Christie Harkin in Toronto, and Managing Editor of Markets, Brad Keoun in Austin. Hello there, Brad and Christie. Happy Friday. All right, so this has certainly been an eventful week for Bitcoin. We've seen all-time highs all at the beginning of the week until Wednesday when it was just under $69,000. Then a bit of a broad retreat in the markets. What's going on, Brad?
Well, Christine, we're just looking back at, sometimes you have to kind of figure out what's actually happened over the past week. I was just looking back at the charts, and we were around 61,000 this time last week. So we had that big round trip, as it were, going up to the all-time high just below 69,000 on Wednesday. And then we've kind of come off the past couple of days. So, now around 64,000. So again, it's just another reminder of how volatile this market can be. And I think we said last week, things were looking pretty bullish. And sure enough, we made the move up to get a new big all-time high on the heels of that inflation report that came out. But then, traders and people seeing, okay, this bolsters the case for Bitcoin as an inflation hedge. But then, markets kind of sold off, not just Bitcoin, but also stocks. People kind of jumping to the next level of, okay, what does this mean for the Fed? This might mean the Fed has to move faster on monetary policy, to tighten monetary policy to keep inflation under control. And generally speaking, when they tighten monetary policy, that's bad for assets seen as risky, and Bitcoin is part of those. So here we are down at 63,000, but we look pretty stable at this level.
It's interesting to see that tug of war going on, because that CPI report where we saw 6.2% year over year inflation after that October report, that seemed to bolster Bitcoin up and supported that narrative that, high inflation, a lot of money printing, while Bitcoin seems to be a safe bet against inflation and a hedge against that. But then we have that news as well about Evergrande in China potentially defaulting on its debts, and what that might mean for stablecoins that back their assets but with commercial paper and hold Chinese commercial paper, how that could impact the crypto markets. So it's really interesting to see this push and pull between narratives. And as you mentioned, a more hawkish Fed that may begin tapering their huge asset purchasing programs. And so what are we seeing in terms of margin calls, long and short-term holders, Brad?
Well, we had that big run up on Wednesday, and then we haven't been in. I don't think people have been saying prior to this run up that we were super overheated or leveraged. But we did have quite a big, it just always happens when you have a big size sell-off.
I've heard people say as much as SHIB and the sentiment coins.
Well, okay, yeah, for sure. Those are, people are saying that is definitely a sign of froth in crypto markets. Absolutely. But specifically in, like the leverage for funding of perpetual swaps, that's what people look at. And I haven't been hearing people talking about it being particularly high. That said, we had a pretty steep sell-off after the all-time high on Wednesday, and there were, $144 million of liquidations, which is a high amount. I mean, we haven't had that for probably a couple months, but, it's not as high as it's been sometimes. But yeah, that always accelerates or exacerbates the volatility for sure.
In terms of news items, of course, this week, Apple's Tim Cook announced revealed that he owns some crypto. A lot of folks speculate probably owns Bitcoin and Ether. And I guess it just goes to this idea of mass adoption. More folks are getting into the space, more respected folks of the traditional tech titan era. AMC is saying that they're going to be accepting Bitcoin as payments in movie theaters, which is an interesting bet. And the mayor of Miami, Francis Suarez, announced on our show on CoinDesk TV that they will actually be giving out a Bitcoin dividend to residents of Miami, as well as trying to educate folks on getting digital wallets. Christie, what is really interesting though about this is this really a Bitcoin dividend?
Well, in a way, yeah. I mean, what the residents of Miami are going to be able to get from this wallet, from at least what I've been able to understand from reading and listening to them, they're going to get real Bitcoin. And what we're working with here is, it is super convoluted. And I'm going to put that right out there because I have read about this several times trying to figure out where the Bitcoin's actually coming from. And it's perfectly clear if you understand it, which I'm still looking for. Here's the thing. So what we've got is they are staking there's these things called city coins, which started, I think, back in June. It's built on Stacks. Now, Stacks is in itself built on Bitcoin as a smart contract layer built on Bitcoin. And you can mine city coins by forwarding Stacks coins into a city coin smart contract. And the city coin of choice in this case would be Miami coin on the Stacks blockchain. And then 30% of the Stacks that miners forward is sent directly to a reserved wallet for that city, in this case, Miami. The remaining 70% of the Stacks that miners forward is distributed to the city coin holders who stack their tokens. And there is a way of generating yield on this, and that yield can be paid out in Bitcoin, apparently. And the yield that's being generated through this fairly convoluted method is a way of generating income, which could be eventually, they're saying, the equivalent of the entire operating budget of the city. And the city can do whatever they want with those dividends. They can use it to build bridges and roads and do whatever, or they can give it back to their citizens. And in this case, it looks like what they're doing is giving a portion of it at least back to the citizens. They still have to work out the logistics of how that's going to work. We know that El Salvador has distributed Bitcoin to its citizens via government-run built wallet that has had its glitches, to say the least. And Miami has not yet revealed how they plan to do this distribution, what method, what wallet, but they're working on it. And the point is to educate their citizens about Bitcoin and its potential, especially with inflation. The mayor cited inflation as being a motivating factor. So we'll see.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's interesting. And Mayor Suarez said that he was testing it with a group of young men as a sort of a test case to see how this would work in distributing funds like this. And he also said that so far, Miami Coin has generated about $20 million of revenue for the city. He said that if it reached a point where it was $400 million, which is what the city gathers in tax revenue, that he would essentially make Miami a taxless city, a city that runs without taxes, so which would certainly be interesting. Nevertheless, let's look ahead. Taproot. The upgrade is finally here. I can't believe we've been talking about it all year long, and it's happening.
I know, right?
The green dots. Christie and the green dots.
It's like laser green dots.
What's going on? Walk us through what to expect.
So Taproot, okay, first off, what is Taproot? It's been a little while since we've talked about it. So, hey, refresher time. Taproot is the most significant Bitcoin upgrade to its code in about 4 years, since segregated witness about 4 years ago. Over 3 years in the making, it replaces Bitcoin's current signature protocol with Schnorr signatures. What that means is that there are now these new, smaller and faster signatures, which will allow developers to make major improvements in how Bitcoin performs. Specifically, they will boost Bitcoin's transaction privacy and allow for more lightweight and complex smart contracts. Yes, smart contracts on Bitcoin that are not going to be all clunky is the goal. So it will open up new possibilities for privacy, multi-signature wallets and security, and scaling. Now, don't get too hyped up on Sunday. It's going to be largely an under the hood improvement. Nobody's going to be like, everything's changed. No, this all has to be eventually integrated into wallets, built upon. Things have to happen in order for us to really take advantage. But it's basically handing developers a wonderful toolkit that is going to improve things like privacy and security and scalability. And that was kicked in motion back in June, I believe it was. And we are now at the end of the waiting period. What needed to happen was a waiting period in order for all of the nodes to upgrade their software to Bitcoin Core 0.21. Well, actually, I think it just goes by 21.1, which is the newest version of Bitcoin Core that contains the activation logic for the Taproot soft fork and a bunch of other improvements. And it's all locked in to kick in at a very specific block height. Bitcoin doesn't measure time, it measures block heights. So when we hit block 709632, sometime in the wee hours of Sunday, Eastern Standard Time, Bitcoin will kick in, or Taproot will kick in. And then it's up to the developers to make it all exciting for us.
And I'm sure there are folks out there who will be up in the wee hours in the morning watching for that to happen.
I can guarantee you there will be Twitter parties.
100%. Brad, is this affecting the price at all? A lot of folks have been saying it's already baked in, but a lot of experts and analysts are really excited about Taproot and the possibilities it has for the network.
It's a great question, Christine. One of our reporters, Lila Ledesma, dug into this question a couple of weeks ago. And, it's an opportunity to kind of really think about the Bitcoin, how the Bitcoin blockchain operates and how it's different from all the other blockchains and communities. And, this is the first one in 4 years. I mean, a big one. And, it's kind of like the halving, every 4 years halvings, and the halvings come and they go. And I've lived through one of them intensively, and, there's not that much of a price reaction when it happens, but people say it happens, that's like for some people, that's the defining, reason why Bitcoin is, an inflation hedge, and why it keeps going up is because the supply keeps getting cut in half every year. I think, the taproot could be similar where, as Lila pointed out in her story, the last upgrade in 2017, which Christie covered, of course, that led to the Lightning Network, which is now a really big deal and growing fast. And it's kind of part of El Salvador's plan, and how they're using Bitcoin as legal tender there. So, I think that's kind of, the Bitcoiners are okay with the slow as you go approach. And, I think to
99.99% uptime on Bitcoin. Like, Bitcoin has been maintained slowly and carefully over the last 13 years, and it just ticks along. We don't hear about crashes in the protocol. We don't hear about breakages. Our devs are awesome, and they keep everything moving along. And if you're going to support $3 trillion asset class, you better make sure it's solid. And that's, I think, what gets people excited.
Just to circle back, and I think what Christie's saying, I think that is kind of priced in. People think this is going to go smoothly. It probably will go smoothly. If it doesn't go smoothly, then you might have a problem. If it goes smoothly, you're probably not going to get too much of a price reaction. It's only if something breaks that, we'll see it. In other words, it's the upside is priced in, the downside maybe not, but the downside seems pretty unlikely.
All right. Well, the Bitcoin is the honey badger. It just keeps going, and I'm sure it will see through this upgrade slowly but surely, and with successful results. All right. Thank you so much to our CoinDesk Week in Review panel with Christie and Brad. You guys have a fantastic weekend. That's it for All About Bitcoin. I'm your host, Christine Lee, and we'll do it all over again on Monday at 3 p.m. Also, join me Monday morning at 9 a.m. in New York for First Mover, your first look at the day's global crypto news headlines. You're watching CoinDesk TV.